There's a moment in every spiritual story where the truth stops knocking and starts kicking down doors. That's exactly where you are right now, in the chapter where everything they whispered, twisted, exaggerated and fabricated is coming back like a boomerang with GPS accuracy. And the funniest part, they're not staying away from you because they suddenly grew maturity or found inner peace. No, they're avoiding you with Olympic-level skills because they lied about you, to the exact person they should have never opened their mouth to, the wrong person, the observant person, the spiritually allergic to nonsense person, the one person who can spot a shaky story from 10 miles away without binoculars. Psychologists say the human brain reacts differently when it hears a lie that doesn't align with what it already believes. It pauses, flags it, and quietly puts the storyteller under surveillance. That's exactly what happened. The moment they dropped your name, something didn't add up, and the listener's spirit went, file that, under suspicious energy. And just like that, the person they tried to impress became the person quietly dissecting them. Now they're out here dodging you like you're the CEO of Truth Inc. They can't make eye contact. They can't interact normally. They can't pretend everything is fine. Why? Because once a lie cracks open, it doesn't just expose the lie, it exposes the liar's motives, insecurities and obsession, all at once. And trust me, they're fully aware their cover story melted faster than ice in Lagos heat. This is the part of your journey where their own mouth became the trap they fell into, and while they're panicking in silence, you're rising without even moving. Your reputation didn't need defending, it defended itself. So buckle up, because in this video, we're about to break down exactly why they're staying far away from the very person they tried to destroy. And the reasons? Oh, they're deeper, more revealing, and way more entertaining than you think. Number 1. They realized the person. They lied to carry more spiritual authority than they do. When they decided to lie about you, they thought they were picking the perfect audience, someone who would swallow the story whole, nod in agreement, and maybe even add a little seasoning to the gossip. What they didn't know was that the person they ran to isn't as gullible or spiritually blind as they assumed. This was someone who listens with more than ears, someone who observes more than they speak, someone whose intuition has a higher accuracy rate than most people's facts. The moment your name came out of their mouth, that person could already feel something was off. Not because the liar stumbled or hesitated, but because the lie didn't sit right in the listener's spirit. It didn't match the frequency of your character or the consistency of your actions. And spiritually mature people can sense when a story comes from a wounded ego instead of the truth. The liar didn't realize they were standing in front of someone who has the kind of discernment that slices through deception like thin paper. Suddenly, the liar went from storyteller to suspect. All it took was a shift in the listener's eyes, a change in the atmosphere, a quiet, That subtle moment of doubt was the beginning of the unraveling. The listener wasn't just hearing a story, they were analyzing tone, intention, motive, and pattern. They saw the bitterness hiding behind the words. They saw the jealousy wrapped in fake concern. They saw the insecurity leaking out of every detail. The liar thought they were planting seeds, but they were exposing roots. And now? They're keeping a distance because they know the listener sees them differently. They know they accidentally revealed too much about themselves. They can't face you because they know word travels. And spiritual people talk to spiritual people. They're scared of the domino effect. They're scared of being exposed further. They're scared because the wrong person now knows exactly who the problem really is. Your truth didn't need defending. The authority of the person they lied to did the defending for you. Now they're hiding, not because of what you did, but because of who overheard the lie. Number 2, their lie collapsed. Because it couldn't survive the character you built in silence. Their lie didn't fall apart because you defended yourself. It fell apart because it couldn't stand next to the kind of person you've consistently shown yourself to be. When someone lies about you, the first thing people compare it to is your track record. And your track record is what ruined their entire story. You've lived with integrity long enough that your character has its own reputation. People know how you move, how you treat others, how you show up, and what you stand for. And that consistency became the quiet proof that exposed every hole in their story. That's why their lie didn't spread the way they expected. They were shocked when the listener didn't instantly take the bait. They were even more shocked when the lies started bouncing back at them. Every time they repeated their story, it got weaker. It sounded less believable. It looked more desperate. Because when someone is solid in who they are, lies sound flimsy in comparison. And the more they talked, the more obvious it became that they were forcing a narrative that simply didn't align with who people already know you to be. Your character has weight, and that weight crushed their accusation before it even had room to grow. People noticed the inconsistency immediately. They knew the story didn't match your behavior, your energy, or your values. Even those who didn't know you personally could feel the difference. Truth has a calmness to it. Lies always come with an undertone of urgency, and the listener caught that difference instantly. Now they're staying far away from you because they realize they underestimated the life you've built. They thought your quietness meant you were easy to target. They thought your humility made you vulnerable. They didn't understand that consistency is its own form of protection. Your character is so well-rooted that their lie couldn't attach itself to you. It slid right off and exposed them in the process. You didn't have to say a word. Your life refuted their story for you, and that's why they're avoiding you now. Because their lie didn't collapse quietly. It collapsed loudly, and it took their credibility down with it. Number 3, someone unexpected checked them with receipts, and they weren't prepared for that. When they opened their mouth to lie about you, they expected the listener to nod along, maybe even help them stretch the story a little further. They were banking on being believed without question. What they didn't expect was for the person they were talking to come armed with quiet receipts, the kind of receipts that don't scream but speak loud enough to destroy a lie instantly. The moment the story left their lips, the listener didn't just hear the words. They compared it to what they already knew about you. They remembered the times you showed integrity, the way you handled past situations, the consistency of your character, and the way you treat people. And those memories became the proof that tore the liar's narrative apart. The liar thought they had the advantage because they spoke first. But they didn't realize the listener already had facts, observations, and first-hand experiences that contradicted everything being said. The listener didn't need to argue. They didn't need to confront aggressively. They simply countered the lie with calm truth, and that alone was enough to shake the liar to their core. Hearing their own story get dismantled in real time was something they never prepared for. They weren't expecting pushback. They weren't expecting someone to actually know you well enough to challenge their claims, and they certainly weren't expecting the conversation to turn on them. The embarrassment hit instantly. The shame followed. Suddenly the liar found themselves exposed in a way that words couldn't cover up. Their confidence cracked. Their voice wavered. The listener's questions became harder to dodge. And the more the listener pushed back, the more the liar realized they had just attempted the wrong thing with the wrong person. Now they can't face you because they know someone checked them so thoroughly that there's no way the truth didn't surface. They know the person they lied to now sees them differently, as someone who bends narratives, exaggerates, and manipulates. That shift alone is enough to make them avoid you like their life depends on it. Their lie didn't just fail. It got confronted, corrected, and exposed all in one moment, and they're still recovering from the humiliation. Number 4. their lie exposed, their hidden obsession with you, and the listener picked up on it immediately. When they started talking about you, it wasn't the words that raised suspicion. It was the way they said them. The tone was too sharp. The details were too exaggerated. The urgency was too intense for a story that wasn't supposed to matter. The listener could feel the emotional charge behind every sentence, and that charge exposed something the liar never wanted anyone to notice: their deep obsession with you. People who don't care don't speak with that much passion. People who are neutral don't sound offended by your existence. And people who are secure don't feel the need to turn someone else into a character in their personal drama. The listener didn't need supernatural discernment. The obsession was practically dripping off every word. What made it even more obvious was how quickly they jumped into criticism. There was no build-up, no context, no reason to bring your name up in the first place. It was unprovoked, and that alone was a huge red flag. You weren't present, you weren't involved, you weren't even being discussed. Yet they found a way to insert your name into the conversation like it was burning a hole in their throat. That's not normal behavior. That's fixation. And the listener caught it instantly. The more they talked, the more the listener began to realize the issue wasn't you at all. It was the liar's reaction to you. Their tone carried insecurity. Their urgency carried bitterness. Their details carried jealousy. Every attempt to tear you down sounded like an attempt to soothe their own ego, and once the listener picked up on that, the whole conversation shifted. Suddenly, the liar looked less like a storyteller and more like someone threatened by your growth, your presence, your light, or your progress. Now they're avoiding you because they know someone finally saw behind the curtain. They know someone recognized the envy they've been disguising as concern. They know the truth slipped out through their own emotions. And once obsession is exposed, it's hard to pretend it never existed. Their lie didn't just fail. It highlighted exactly how much you live rent-free in their mind, and that realization is what they're running from now. Number 5, they accidentally exposed their own motives, not your character. When they opened their mouth to talk about you, they thought they were exposing you, but all they did was shine a bright light on themselves. Every word they used, every detail they twisted, every part of the story they exaggerated, revealed something they didn't intend for anyone to see: their real motives. The bitterness slipped out without their permission. The insecurity oozed through every accusation. The fixation became obvious the second they kept circling back to your name like it was glued to their tongue. Instead of painting you in a bad light, they ended up revealing the parts of themselves they'd been trying to hide for years. The listener didn't walk away thinking less of you. They walked away thinking, why does this person care this much? Why are they so invested in tearing someone down who isn't even here? That kind of intensity doesn't come from truth. It comes from jealousy, resentment, or a fragile ego looking for someone to blame. And as the liar kept talking, the listener quietly started connecting dots. They began noticing patterns in the liar's behavior: the constant comparisons, the unnecessary comments, the one-sided rivalry. Suddenly, everything made sense. Instead of believing the attack, the listener grew suspicious of the attacker. Their story was shaky. Their energy was off. Their emotions were too strong for something that shouldn't matter that deeply. It became clear that the lie wasn't about exposing your character. It was about protecting their pride. It was about deflecting attention away from their own flaws. It was about trying to control a narrative they were never in charge of in the first place. That shift in perception is exactly why they're now keeping their distance. They know the person they lied to sees them differently, as someone who speaks from wounded feelings, not truth. They're avoiding you because being around you reminds them of the moment they lost control of their own story. They tried to bury you with lies, and instead they buried their own image. Their motives are out in the open, and they know they can't take that back. Number 6. The person they lied to had already been questioning their spirit. Long before your name ever entered the conversation, the person they lied to already had concerns about them. Something about their behavior never fully added up. The inconsistencies, the dramatic reactions, the subtle negativity that always seemed to follow them. They were the type who carried a storm cloud around but pretended it was sunshine. And people who pay attention can sense that kind of imbalance. The listener had been quietly observing, noting the patterns, noticing the tension in their words and actions. They hadn't said anything yet, but they were watching closely. So when your enemy tried to slander you, they didn't realize they were walking straight into a trap they set for themselves. They thought they were adding new information, but they were actually confirming what the listener already suspected, that they were dealing with someone whose spirit was unsettled and whose intentions were rarely clean. The moment they started talking about you, the listener didn't hear truth. They heard projection. They heard frustration. They heard unresolved issues being disguised as concern. Their attempt to trash your name only exposed the turmoil in their own heart. The listener didn't need to investigate. They didn't need to cross-check facts. They already had a mental file on this person, and the lie about you was the final stamp needed to close the case. Instead of turning against you, the listener shifted even further away from them. They saw the jealousy. They saw the pettiness. They saw the unnecessary cruelty. And in that moment, the liar's mask didn't just slip, it shattered. Now they're avoiding you because they know the person they tried to impress sees them clearly. There's no recovering from that type of exposure. They can't pretend to be innocent. They can't pretend to be the victim. They can't pretend to be spiritually aligned. Their character was weighed, and it didn't measure up. Being in your presence now feels dangerous to them because it reminds them of how quickly their facade fell apart in front of the wrong witness. Their lie didn't damage your reputation, it damaged theirs, and that's a truth they can't face. Number 7, their lie sounded too detailed to be true, and that raised red flags. When someone is telling the truth, their words are simple, natural, and straight to the point. But when a person is lying, they tend to overcompensate, adding unnecessary descriptions, dramatic pauses, and extra details that nobody asked for. That's exactly what happened when they tried to slander you. The story wasn't just told, it was delivered like a rehearsed monologue. There were too many specifics for something that wasn't supposed to be that deep. The details didn't fit the situation. The intensity didn't match the topic. And the listener immediately sensed that something wasn't adding up. Their lie had the kind of structure that felt practiced. Every line sounded like it had been rehearsed in a mirror. Every expression felt exaggerated, as if they were auditioning for a part in a drama instead of having a genuine conversation. People who tell the truth don't need to perform, but people who lie often rely on theatrics to sell their story. And that theatrical energy was exactly what raised the listener's suspicions. The moment the listener heard the overly polished story, they knew something was off. There was too much effort being put into making you look bad, and effort like that usually means insecurity. The lie was too detailed, too tidy, too perfectly crafted. It had the fingerprints of someone who had been waiting for the opportunity to talk about you in a negative way, and that level of preparedness is a red flag all by itself. As the liar kept talking, the story grew heavier and heavier, not because it carried truth, but because it carried desperation. Every added detail made it less believable. Every dramatic touch exposed how badly they wanted the listener to pick a side, and the more they talked, the more obvious it became that the story was less about the event and more about their obsession with dragging your name through the mud. Now they're avoiding you because they know the listener caught onto the performance. They can feel the shift. They can feel the mistrust. They can feel that someone saw through the act. And once a lie is recognized as a performance, the performer can no longer pretend innocence. Their story didn't just fail, it exposed their true intentions, and they know it. Number 8. They didn't expect the listener to come back and ask you directly. They thought their lie would stay exactly where they dropped it, hidden, unchallenged, and accepted without a second thought. They assumed the person they lied to would just swallow the story whole and keep it moving. What they didn't anticipate was the listener's maturity. Instead of spreading the story or reacting emotionally, the listener did the one thing that liars fear the most. They came straight to you, calm, respectful, no drama, just a simple, honest question to confirm what they heard. And that quiet, direct approach was enough to collapse the entire lie. When someone comes to you directly, it strips every layer of protection from the liar's narrative. It removes the element of secrecy they were counting on. It forces the truth into the open, where it's clear, clean, and impossible to distort. And the moment you clarified the truth, without anger, without chaos, without matching their story's energy, the picture became crystal clear. The listener immediately understood who was being truthful and who was manufacturing drama to stay relevant. The liar didn't expect that kind of follow-up. They expected blind loyalty, not accountability. They expected gossip, not wisdom. They expected a reaction, not investigation. So when the listener calmly approached you, the liar's stomach dropped. Because that one move meant their story was no longer in their control. It meant their version of events was being compared to reality, and reality was not on their side. The moment they found out you had been asked directly, panic hit them hard. Not because they were afraid you would confront them, but because they instantly knew what that meant. Their credibility had been damaged. Someone now sees them differently. Someone now knows they stretch truths, twist facts, and create unnecessary drama. And credibility is something you can't get back once it cracks. Now they're avoiding you because they know the truth traveled faster than their lie. They know the listener saw the difference between your calm honesty and their shaky performance. And nothing terrifies a liar more than people discovering who they really are. Number 9. Their spirit couldn't hold eye contact with you after the lie boomeranged. The moment their lie came back to them, something inside shifted. Not in you, but in them. It's one thing to lie behind someone's back. It's another thing entirely to stand in front of the person you tried to destroy. Your presence carries truth, and truth has a way of exposing whatever someone tried to bury. That's why, suddenly, they couldn't look you in the eyes anymore. Their spirit became restless. Their body language turned stiff. Their whole energy shifted the second they realized their lie didn't stay in the dark like they expected. People underestimate how loudly guilt speaks without words. It shows up in the way someone avoids your glance, the way they fidget, the way their smile doesn't reach their eyes, the way they can't keep their voice steady. They didn't need to confess. Their spirit confessed for them. Every time you walked into a room, every time your voice carried across the space, they felt the weight of their own dishonesty pressing on them. It wasn't you confronting them. It was their conscience struggling under the pressure of being exposed. Deep down, they know your energy reads people clearly. They know you can sense shifts, tension, and strange behavior. And that terrifies them, because your presence reflects the truth they tried to distort. Being around you feels like standing in front of a mirror that shows everything they don't want anyone to see. The jealousy, the insecurity, the guilt. Their body reacts before they can control it. Their eyes dart away. Their shoulders tighten. Their words stumble. Their spirit tries to retreat even when their body stays in place. They're avoiding you now not because they fear you'll confront them, but because simply standing near you feels like exposure. You didn't call them out with words, your energy did. You didn't accuse them, their own conscience did, and that's something they can't escape. When a lie boomerangs, it doesn't just return with truth, it returns with accountability. And their spirit isn't strong enough to face that, so they stay away, not out of anger or pride, but because being around you makes their guilt impossible to hide. Your presence carries clarity, and clarity is the one thing their lie couldn't survive. Number 10. The listener realized you had nothing to gain from their downfall, but the liar did. When someone lies about you, part of their plan is to make it look like you had a motive. They want others to think you're plotting, scheming, or trying to bring them down. What they didn't anticipate was that the listener could see clearly through motives. The listener observed not just the words, but the energy behind them. And what became immediately obvious was that you had nothing to gain from their downfall. Your life, your path, your energy, and your alignment are too clean, too elevated, and too purposeful to waste time sabotaging anyone. Your focus has always been forward, upward, and inward. There's no space in your life for petty destruction, and that authenticity is impossible to fake. Meanwhile, the liar's motives were easy to spot. Every exaggeration, every accusation, every unnecessary detail revealed the exact opposite. They had reasons. They had jealousy bubbling under the surface. They had resentment that had been simmering for years. They had competition in their hearts that needed validation. Their envy, insecurity, and desire to feel superior were leaking through every line they spoke. That contrast between your lack of motive and their overflowing motive exposed them instantly. Truth doesn't just come from what is said, it comes from who carries the energy, and theirs was screaming desperation and obsession. The listener didn't have to dig deep to see the difference. You appeared steady, calm, and untouched by their attempts to slander you. They were reactive, anxious, and over-invested. In that split second, the narrative flipped. The lie no longer reflected on you. It reflected on them. And anyone paying attention could see it. It became clear who was projecting, who was threatened, and who had nothing better to do than drag someone else down. Now the liar is avoiding you because they know their energy has been read. They know their motives are transparent to anyone with discernment. And they know the world can see the truth if the wrong person chooses to expose it. Their lie didn't just fail, it shone a spotlight on why they tried to lie in the first place. Number 11. Their lie was so out of alignment with your essence that it sounded like a confession. There are moments when a lie doesn't just fail, it exposes the liar's own spiritual fingerprints. That's exactly what happened here. The story they tried to attach to your name didn't carry your frequency, your essence, or your emotional signature. It didn't match the way you move, the way you speak, the way you handle conflict, or the way you exist in this world. Instead, everything about that lie sounded like them, their insecurities, their habits, their emotional patterns, their fears, their character flaws, their projections. They thought they were painting you, but every stroke revealed their own reflection. Spiritually, people can feel when something is off. Even if they can't articulate it, they can sense misalignment the same way the body senses danger. And the moment the listener heard that lie, something didn't click. Not because the story wasn't dramatic enough, but because it wasn't you. It didn't feel like your nature. It didn't match your moral compass. It didn't sound like the way you respond, react, or behave. So instead of absorbing the lie, the listener subconsciously traced the energy back to the one who created it. And what they found wasn't evidence against you. It was a confession disguised as an accusation. That's the spiritual boomerang. The moment someone uses your name as a vessel for their bitterness, your essence pushes the narrative back to sender. You didn't have to defend yourself. Your alignment defended you. Your character defended you. Your consistency defended you. Your peace, your growth, your self-discipline, all of it stood in front of you like a shield. They weren't prepared for that. They expected their lie to sound believable. They didn't expect it to expose everything they tried to hide about themselves. Now they're avoiding you not because you confronted them, but because your very existence contradicts every word they spoke. Being in your presence reminds them of what they revealed. Standing near you makes them feel spiritually naked. Their lie didn't damage your reputation. It revealed their shadow. Their words didn't stain your name. They spotlighted the energy they've been trying to conceal. And deep down, they know everyone who heard that lie felt the mismatch instantly. They didn't describe you. They described themselves. Number 12. They realized. They chose the one person who protects you spiritually. This is the part they never expected. They thought they were choosing an easy audience, someone they could manipulate, someone who would swallow the story without thinking twice. What they didn't realize was that the person they chose wasn't neutral. They were spiritually tied to you in ways the liar couldn't sense or understand. That listener wasn't just someone in the background. They were someone who has quietly watched your character, your integrity, your patterns, and your spirit over time. They were someone who respects your energy, someone who sees the truth in silence and feels authenticity without needing proof. When the liar opened their mouth, they didn't just expose themselves. They triggered a hidden guardian in your story. This person wasn't loud about it. They didn't confront the liar publicly. They didn't create drama. But internally, something shifted. A protective instinct snapped into place. They saw you being targeted unfairly, and something inside them said, "Not this one. You picked the wrong soul to play with." The liar didn't understand spiritual loyalty. They didn't understand that some people are assigned to protect you without wearing a title or announcing their role. They didn't know that this listener was connected to your journey on a deeper level, emotionally, spiritually, or intuitively. They didn't know this person has discernment sharp enough to separate truth from insecurity. They didn't know this person has already seen your heart, felt your sincerity, and witnessed your growth. And now the liar knows they messed up. They chose someone who won't let your name be dragged, someone who won't entertain foolishness, someone who sees through manipulation like sunlight through thin fabric. That realization hit them harder than any confrontation could. That's why they're avoiding you now, not because you exposed them, but because their lie woke up someone who stands spiritually guard over you. They exposed themselves to exactly the person who was never going to turn against you. Someone who defends you silently but effectively. They didn't just lie to the wrong person. They lied to the one person who would always choose truth. And that truth protects you. Number 13. The listener confronted them with a level of wisdom they weren't ready for. They approached that conversation thinking they were about to recruit someone into their personal drama. They expected a nod, a gasp, maybe even a look of concern that would boost their ego and make their lie feel believable. Instead, they were met with a calm, sharp, spiritually mature kind of wisdom. The type that cuts through manipulation without raising its voice. The listener didn't take their words at face value. They paid attention to the pauses, the emotional tone, the urgency, and the clear agenda hidden underneath. And that alone shook the liar's confidence. What they didn't expect were the questions. Real questions, smart questions. Questions that demanded honesty instead of theatrics. Questions that forced them to explain details they never thought they'd have to justify. That's when their story began to crumble. not because the listener attacked them, but because the listener simply refused to play along with anything ungrounded or unbalanced. Wisdom has a way of exposing lies effortlessly, and the liar wasn't prepared for someone who thinks, observes, and discerns before believing anything. The listener's subtle change in energy was the real turning point. They didn't argue. They didn't escalate. They simply became distant, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That distance felt like a door quietly closing. No dramatic slam, just a soft but unmistakable shift that told the liar everything they needed to know. I don't believe you. Losing credibility is one thing, losing influence is another, but losing both in a single conversation, that's what terrified them, because now they know that someone they once felt they could manipulate sees them clearly, and sees you clearly. And there's no recovery from that kind of exposure. That's why they're staying far away from you, not because you confronted them, but because the listener confronted them with wisdom and they couldn't withstand it. Their lie died right there in that moment, and their fear of being seen for who they really are is what keeps them hiding now. Number 14. They now know you carry social and spiritual influence. They underestimated. This is the truth they never wanted to face. Your name travels with an integrity they can't touch. They thought smearing you would be simple because they assumed you were unprotected, unnoticed, or easy to misjudge. They didn't realize that people who have never even shared a full conversation with you already respect you. Your presence leaves impressions. Your energy leaves memory. Your character leaves evidence. Without even trying, you've built a reputation that stands on its own legs, without gossip, without noise, without campaigning for approval. The moment their lie fell flat, they realized something they were never prepared to accept. You are not just known, you are trusted. That trust doesn't come from popularity or performance. It comes from consistency. People have watched how you move, how you handle conflict, how you treat others, how you carry yourself. Even in your quiet seasons, people observed your strength, humility, and self-respect. So when the liar tried to stain your name, their attack didn't align with what people already knew about you. Instead of damaging your image, the lie highlighted how out of touch the liar is with your true essence. What shook them even deeper was the spiritual influence you carry. Some people can't explain why they believe you. They just do. Your energy commands respect. Your authenticity commands trust. Your spirit speaks a language that aligns with truth, and people with discernment hear it loud and clear. And the liar felt that shift instantly. They saw how fast people distanced themselves from their nonsense. They saw how their lie didn't stick, didn't spread, didn't multiply. They saw how the listener leaned more toward you than toward them. That scared them, because it meant they were never in control the way they imagined. Now they're retreating because they finally understand your authority, socially and spiritually. They realize your name carries a weight their insecurity can't compete with, and their lie reminded them that you are not someone who can be casually played with. Your influence was underestimated, and that discovery pushed them into hiding. What we've uncovered here is more than just a story about lies and deception. It's a blueprint for understanding how truth, integrity, and spiritual alignment always find their way to the surface. Every lie thrown your way, every attempt to smear your name, every whisper and exaggeration, it all backfired because it was never about you. It was about them. Their insecurity, jealousy, obsession, and desperation became the very thing that exposed them. They miscalculated. They underestimated not just your character, but the spiritual and social networks that quietly protect you. They misread the people around you, thinking loyalty, discernment, and wisdom were weaknesses, when in reality they are shields that keep you untouchable. from the way their lies crumbled against the solid foundation of your character, to the way the wrong audience turned out to be your silent protector. Every move they made against you highlighted the depth of your authority, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that naturally commands respect. Their panic, avoidance, and retreat are proof that integrity and spiritual alignment can't be faked, bought, or silenced. You don't have to yell. You don't have to defend yourself. Your life, your actions, and your energy already speak louder than anything they could fabricate. This isn't just a victory over a single act of deception. It's a reminder that when people try to manipulate or bring you down, the universe has already positioned the right people, the right timing, and the right circumstances to restore balance. They're avoiding you now because truth is louder than lies, wisdom is sharper than manipulation, and spiritual authority is stronger than envy. And the most important lesson: every attempt to harm you will always reveal more about the person attacking you than it ever could about you. If this message resonated with you and opened your eyes to the deeper layers of truth, protection, and authority in your life, make sure to hit that subscribe button to join our community. Give this video a like if you found it powerful, comment below to share your thoughts or experiences, and don't forget to share it with someone who needs this insight. Your energy deserves to be surrounded by truth, clarity, and understanding. And this channel is here to help you recognize it, embrace it, and grow stronger every single day. God bless him.